Backcountry was predictable, rugged, beautiful, and familiar. But on one cold October night in the San Juan Mountains, something started following him and his friend, something tall, quiet, and painfully aware of every move they made. What began as a simple hunting trip slowly twisted into a night of mimicry, footsteps, and a presence in the trees that refused to step fully into the light. And once he realized it wasn't an animal or a person, it was already too late to pretend it wasn't watching. Before we go any further, if this is your first time watching one of our videos, we'd love for you to hit that subscribe button. Your support means the world to us, and it helps us bring you even more powerful stories. Stick with us till the very end, and if this story moves you, drop your thoughts in the comments and share it with a friend. I've slept under 100 skies, tents on ridgelines, a tarp in a thunderstorm, a lean-to when the wind decided to be rude. So when I say the San Juans felt different that weekend, I mean it in a way I couldn't shake loose with a cigarette or a hot coffee. It wasn't loud. It was the kind of quiet that presses against your ears until everything else sounds thin. We rolled up Piedra Road mid-afternoon. Dust on the truck, packs strapped down like small, stubborn animals. My buddy Darren was driving. Steady hands, the kind you trust when gravel starts acting up. We'd planned a simple 5-day hunt. Ridgelines, timber edges, an early start each day. Clean, predictable, like the old routine we both liked. You know how you tell yourself that when you pack, right? Just the usual. The campsite we chose sits where the road dips and the trees close in, a little pocket the maps call a pull-off. It's the spot most locals use because it's convenient and out of the main traffic. We set 2 small tents under a stand of spruce, stretched a tarp for food, and triple-checked the cooler. There's always a rhythm. Unload, stake, stove, little chores that make the place ours for a while. My hands moved on autopilot. I felt the scrape of nylon, the clamp of metal. The familiar ache in my shoulders that means tomorrow you'll be moving more than sitting. People walked past that afternoon. Other hunters, a couple of day hikers, a woman with binoculars who looked like she could tell the difference between elk tracks and deer tracks from 100 yards. They nodded, small talk in passing. You boys heading up? Yep, couple days. Good luck. Easy stuff, polite distance. 2 guys in camo near the next pullout lingered longer than usual, whispering, low, half-laughs that fade into the kind of gossip you don't start unless something else is on your mind. I heard one say, "You hear about them tracks?" The other replied, "Yeah, weird. Folks been talking since spring. They didn't meet our eyes." People have a way of looking past you when they're keeping a secret. We took our first ridge walk late afternoon, glassing hollows and rattling through brush. At the tree line, I noticed marks on a fallen trunk, deep, parallel scrapes that cut through the older lichen like someone had drawn with a crowbar. Not clawed like a bear, not sliced like a branch tearing under hoof. These were deliberate, long strokes, the kind of gouge you see when a sharp, heavy thing slides against wood. I crouched, thumb tracing the groove, tasting sap and old resin on the air. I said out loud, because saying something anchors the mind. Darren shuffled his feet, scanning the slope, and said, "Maybe a big elk rubbed himself bad." He was trying to laugh it off. I wanted to, too, but a little voice in my chest said, "Nah, wrong angle, wrong spacing." Small things add up. The texture of the gouge, the lack of fur snagged in the bark, the pattern, too regular to be animal-made. It rubbed my sense of the ordinary the wrong way. On the way back, we passed a pair of hikers sitting on a log, jerky in a plastic bag between them. One nodded when he saw the marks. He muttered so low I almost missed it. "Saw something up there last spring. Tall. Weird." He looked away quick, like he'd said too much. The other scoffed. "Ain't nothing here but trees." But their shoulders were tight, not the way people carry themselves when they're sure. Little rumors like that curl in the air, and folks tuck them under their tongue like a bitter pill. Night moved in like a thing with edges. We built a small fire, no big blaze, just a heat ring for cooking and to keep the breeze honest. The forest closed to a black wall a few yards beyond the camp glow. Firelight made the spruce trunks look like columns, and the moss took on a green that felt almost violent under that flame. We ate slow, boots tipped off and socks airing. Silence, then laughter. Then silence again. Nature noise is usually a kind of music. Frogs, distant coyotes, leaves doing their rustle. This night, the usual band was thin. It felt like someone had turned down a part of the orchestra. Around 10, the wind changed and the air sharpened. I went to check the perimeter. Little rituals matter at night. You run your hand on a tent line, you tighten a knot, you listen. That's when I heard it. A footstep up on the ridge. Not a rustle, not the random scuff of a branch. A footfall. Slow, measured. It moved when we moved, and paused when we paused. My chest went tight. I told myself it was another hunter circling, someone doing their own thing. We called out, 2 sharp, friendly yells, but there was no reply. Just the sound cutting through the dark like a metronome. I couldn't sleep well that night. Every creak sounded like meaning. I'd close my eyes, and in the black I'd see the tree scratches, hear that measured step. Darren said he heard nothing, but his voice was thin at the edges, like he was trying to convince both of us, himself most of all. We drink coffee at dawn because it's habit, because the body prefers an anchor. That morning, the coffee tasted metallic. The sky was a flat gray, like a lid pressed down. We packed, checked the map, and tried to let the moment pass into a memory we could laugh about later. As we climbed higher that day, small things kept showing. Fresh breaks in low branches at a height too high for an elk to reach easily. Moss stripped in a narrow band along a standing pine. Odd noises, low moans that rolled across the basin, then stopped as if someone switched them off. At one point, a hunting group we passed craned their necks, and one of them muttered, "We heard it last season. Sounded like a foghorn, only wrong." Their friend shrugged, uneasy, and they hurried away. You could feel the gossip knitting itself, strangers putting small oddities together until a pattern, however shaky, began to form. By late afternoon, we turned back toward camp, our pace quiet and quick. There was no dramatic confrontation, no face-to-face moment, no sudden sprint. Just an atmosphere, a weight, a sense of being observed in a way that made your skin feel thin. I tightened my pack straps with both hands, adjusted the hip belt, breathed in pine and dust and something else, something that might have been iron or nerves. We walked with our heads down, listening for the cadence of normal things, hoping the forest would be ordinary again. When we reached camp, a second tarp had been draped over the next site, and 2 hunters were standing there, talking in low voices. One glanced at us and said, "You boys see anything?" He wasn't asking for small talk. The same hush that had followed us all day sat in his mouth like a small stone. I shrugged, gave a non-committal half-smile, and said, "Just the usual," but the man kept looking at the ridge, as if waiting for something to step out and say hello. That night I lay in the tent and thought about those parallel gouges in the wood, about the measured footsteps, about whispers on the wind. Small things, no one thing big enough to explain it, but together they pressed at the edges of my sense of safety. I rolled onto my side and listened, and the forest listened back. By the time sunset slid behind the ridge, the forest felt like it had pulled in its breath. The air had that cold metallic edge that sneaks up on your skin, the kind that makes you pull your jacket a little tighter without thinking about it. Our little campfire was trying its best, popping now and then, but even the sparks felt quieter. I kept glancing toward the tree line, not because of any one thing, but because of that accumulation of unease. The marks on the log, the hush in the air, the hunters whispering like kids swapping ghost stories in the dark. It all braided together and tightened around the edges of our evening. We cooked a small dinner, heat up beans, heat up water, that whole mountain gourmet routine. Darren cracked a joke about how he should have packed hot sauce, but even he sounded subdued, like his mind was focused somewhere behind the trees. Then, that smell drifted in, not rot, not animal musk, just something faintly metallic, like the air right before lightning touches the ground. It didn't belong there. I blinked and leaned forward a little, sniffing at the breeze like a dog trying to place a scent. Darren noticed and raised an eyebrow. "What are you doing?" Smells weird," I said, rubbing my thumb along the side of my cup. He laughed once, short, clipped, not amused, just trying to break the tension. The forest didn't laugh back. The night crept in around us, trees stacking in layered silhouettes. The fire threw a small orange dome, and everything outside of it became a wall of soft black shapes. I fiddled with the zipper on my jacket, tapped my boot heel in the dirt, those tiny movements people make when their mind is restless. Then the first sound came, a slow crack above us on the slope, not sharp enough to be a branch snapping under weight, more like something pressing down, testing the give of old wood. I turned my head toward it, blinking into the dark, waiting. The silence that followed felt intentional, like something holding still, listening for our reaction. Darren shifted, the fabric of his jacket whispering. "You heard that too?" We sat there, both of us pretending to relax, pretending we weren't straining our ears like antennas. Another sound, softer. A footstep. A very slow, deliberate step. You know the difference between animal movement and something with awareness. Animals scurry, trot, shuffle. This sound had weight placement, heel, pause. Then something like toes pressing into the soil. It circled our camp at a distance, always staying just beyond the firelight. I leaned forward slightly, elbows on my knees, fingers interlaced, knuckles whitening. Darren exhaled sharply through his nose. A quiet man, no way, almost like he was trying to negotiate with the dark. It kept pacing, walking, stopping, listening, repeating. Branches rustled, not violently, just nudging aside as if something tall brushed past them. I whispered, "That's not elk." Darren didn't correct me this time. A low tapping began, rhythmic, like knuckles grazing bark. 3 taps, then silence, then another 3, measured and even. I froze in place, eyes narrowing toward the sound, not daring to move too quickly. The tapping shifted position, from left to right to somewhere behind our tents. That was when my stomach dropped. Not because of danger. Not fear. It was something older. Primitive. Instinct level. The tapping wasn't random. It was mimicking. Earlier that evening, while setting up our tarp, Darren had tapped the trunk 3 times to test strength. The rhythm now was identical. Same spacing. Same cadence. It was copying him. I swallowed hard, throat tight, tongue suddenly dry. I didn't say anything. Some part of me felt that words would break whatever fragile balance the moment was balancing on. Then came the shape. Not a full silhouette, just movement, where nothing should move. A long shadow shifted between 2 trees, tall enough that its head brushed a hanging branch. It didn't step into the light. It stayed just where the glow faded, letting the fire outline its edges in faint, broken lines. I blinked once, twice, to steady my eyes. The outline didn't vanish. It stood there, watching. Silent, still. Present. I couldn't see eyes, couldn't see a face. Just a tall, impossibly lean frame that seemed to fold into the trees. The wind brushed the leaves overhead, but that figure didn't sway. It stayed rooted like it belonged more to the forest than to anything with breath. Darren whispered, "What is that?" dragging the words out like each piece of language weighed something. Neither of us reached for weapons. It wasn't fear. It was that deep sense that any sudden movement would shift the entire night into something irreversible. Then, the sound changed again. A soft, dragging exhale, almost like someone sighing through a cracked door. Not threatening. Not aggressive. Just wrong. Like a voice that didn't have lungs behind it. Then footsteps. Not toward us, but across the slope, moving slowly along the ridge. The figure peeled away from the trees with a strange, tilting gait, as if its joints weren't arranged the way they should be. It moved uphill, fading inch by inch until the dark swallowed its outline whole. We didn't speak for a long time. We just listened to the mountain breathing. Eventually, Darren muttered, "We should go." Not loud, not assertive. Just a soft plea wrapped in a shaky whisper. We grabbed only what we absolutely needed: headlamps, water, phones, jackets. We didn't pack camp. Didn't douse the fire. We just moved, quiet as possible, toward the faint trail leading down toward the ranger station 2 miles below. Every snap of twigs behind us made my skin crawl. Every rustle felt like a shadow leaning close. We didn't run. Running felt like permission. We just kept walking, heads low, breaths shallow, the trail slipping beneath our boots like a river of dirt. Halfway down, the tapping returned, far away. Higher up. 3 taps. Pause. 3 more. Mimicking Darren again. He stopped walking for just a moment, shoulders rising and falling fast. Then he whispered, "Nope, nope, keep moving." So we did. The trail narrowed, the trees closing in around us like folded arms. My lamp flickered once, then steadied. The wind shifted and the metallic scent returned. Faint, but enough to make my stomach tighten. We reached the last bend before the ranger station, and something, a tall, branch-like silhouette, stood against the tree line above, watching us descend. It didn't follow. It just watched, like it wanted to remember us, and then it slipped back into the dark as quietly as it had arrived. We didn't breathe properly again until the ranger station lights finally came into view, soft yellow squares glowing like a promise that the night would end eventually. When the ranger's porch light hit us like a small rescue, I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. My knees felt loose, like someone had drained the air out of them. Darren leaned against the station wall, forehead pressed to cool wood, and laughed once, a short, absurd sound that snapped into nothing. We both looked like we'd been through something, but couldn't yet explain the shape of it. The ranger who met us, Marta, had the kind of voice that makes you tell the plain truth. She set down a thermos, handed us each a paper cup, and watched us like she was cataloging our faces for later. Her eyes flicked to my hands, the way they trembled slightly as I took the cup. I forced the cup to my lips, felt the heat, and drank. It tasted like survival. Bitter. Necessary. "We had a call," she said, matter of fact, like reading minutes. 2 hunters from the next pullout reported lights on the ridge, and someone said they heard tapping. She paused, eyebrows up. "You boys see anything?" I wanted to say everything and nothing at the same time. I wanted to tell her the figure, the mimicry, the way the night copied our small rhythms. Instead, I said, maybe. Something up there was watching. My voice sounded small in the night air. She listened without flinching. That was the weird part. Not disbelief, not shock, just a steady intake of data. "You not the first people to be spooked," she said. "We've had calls before. Campers getting weird vibes, gear moving, dogs barking at nothing." She didn't say the thing we all wanted. There's a reason. Instead, she offered practical things. Forms to file, log numbers. "We'll put a patrol through tomorrow." Folks came down to the station. The 2 camo guys from the pullout, the woman with binoculars, even the day hikers. They clustered like a small, patched-up congregation around a coffee pot and traded small versions of the same story. A man with a gravelly voice said, "We heard taps last spring, too, same rhythm." The woman with binoculars nodded. And once, a friend swore he saw, well, something tall in the trees. Their talk sounded like gossip at first, then like evidence piling up piece by careful piece. People repeated details, some different, some the same, and the pattern grew. The tapping, the mimicry, the tall shadow that never quite stepped into the light. Little facts knit together, not into proof, but into a community memory you don't shrug off easily. By morning, the forest had shed the sharpness of the night. Light softened the spruce, showing the place as ordinary again. Yet I noticed details on the ridge I hadn't before. A strip of bark torn in a long line, fresh soil where none had been, the faint abrasion of something tall moving through lower branches. Nothing conclusive, nothing neat, but enough to keep questions alive. We filed a report. We showed where we'd been. Marta made notes, precise, looping her pen with professional calm. "We'll catalog everything," she said. "We'll put up extra calls and increase patrols." Her eyes were kind but flat. I could hear the bureaucracy humming behind those words. The forms, the meetings, the cooler emails. "Real change," she implied. "Moves slowly." Word spread. The local diner filled with quiet chatter the next day. Old-timers at the counter, coffee cooling in chipped mugs. A man in a trucker cap told a younger woman, "You don't wander there after dusk, not this season." A teenager smirked and said, "It's probably a big cat or someone pranking." But the waitress, who'd known both of us since high school, slid a plate across and said softly, "You two look rattled. Don't go back up. That's how these things work. Rumor, precaution, and the sticky human need to explain or to push away." Some people said we'd seen a bear. Others swore it was nothing. A few whispered about older tales, hikers who said the land sometimes keeps people for a spell, or hunters who described an animal that moves like a person but isn't one. These are stories folks pass on at cabin doors to keep their kids close. Over the next week, life tried to steady itself. We went back to work, to routine, to the small chores that stitch a weekend back into existence. But tiny habits had changed. I stopped leaving my jacket unzipped. I tightened zippers like a ritual. I checked inside my truck before getting in, listening for any odd rhythm. A laugh from Darren now had a softer edge. We still meet for beers, reel out the memory, and test it against each other, trying to find the word that fits. I drove by the pullout a month later, slow, as if seeing the ridge again might dissolve the memory. The trees looked harmless, beautiful even, but the place had a patient silence now, like it was concealing something and didn't feel the need to tell. The gnawed trunk I'd crouched by had fresh marks near where the old grooves were, as if whatever had brushed it was back, steady as tide. Rangers did increase night patrols for a while. Cameras were hung in places they said they'd never bothered to watch. Logs were kept. People felt safer, which helped a little. But the raw edge didn't go away entirely. The land, I realized, keeps its own calendar. It measures things in seasons, and in ways we don't always understand. Sometimes it gives us signals, small, strange, that we choose to ignore, or to tuck away into stories we tell over dim lights. You ask, what should you do if you hear tapping? Don't go poking around like a fool. Keep your headlamp ready. Travel with someone. Respect the dark. And if something mimics you, walk away, slow and steady. Leave space. And me? I keep my maps folded in a drawer now. I still go out. I love the mountains too much to quit, but I won't go back to that ridge. I don't need to. The memory is sharp enough. The forest taught me something I didn't want to learn the hard way. Not all wilderness is simply wild. Some of it listens, and some of it answers back when you make a sound. I'll never hunt in the San Juans again. No argument. No bravado. Just a quiet, stubborn truth. If you've been out there, if you felt the land watch you in a way that makes your skin itch, drop a comment. Tell me what you heard. I don't have answers, but I know stories matter. They keep us honest, and they might just keep someone else alive. If you've ever felt watched in the wilderness or heard something out there that didn't walk, breathe, or move like it should, drop your story in the comments. I read everyone. And hey, if you want more true outdoor mysteries, unexplained encounters, and stories that stay with you long after the screen goes dark, make sure you hit subscribe. There are more strange nights out there, and we're just getting started.